Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education by Kate Colbert and Joe Sallustio with contributions by Elvin Freites is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
amazing.
Fierce Education targets higher education leaders, administrators, and faculty, and those driving technology adoption decisions in this new blended learning world. Go to www.fierceeducation.com for all the latest news, tips, and successful case studies of what higher education institutions are doing to better student engagement, ensure equal access, and improve the assessment process. That's www.fierceeducation.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp here on the EdUp Experience Podcast, where we make education your business. In fact, we've made it your business over 500 times. Can you believe it? I can't, because I actually have to buy a new microphone soon, because this one has seen its better days. Let me say that. Somebody that sees a great day every day is my co-host here on this episode. In fact, I had to go back because it's been a bit since she's been on with me. I had to go back. I had to dust off her introduction. Here it is. I should actually record it so I don't have to do it live. Ladies and gentlemen, my co-host today, you know her, you love her, Dr. Michelle Cantu Wilson. Lorena Del Airhorn, right?
Joe.
Did you say something?
Joe, I appreciate your enthusiasm. I appreciate the air horn as usual. I love being La Reina del Air Horn, but for this episode, I'm going to love even more being the actual show host. Today, you're in the interview seat, my friend.
Oh my gosh, this is an official EdUp takeover. Michelle texted me. Along with me here, by the way, before I tell the story, I have a special guest. I guess she's my co-guest. Oh, wait a minute. Am I a guest? Yeah, I am a guest on my own podcast. So she's also the secondary guest. Figure that one out. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen.
Come on. Put your hands up in the air.
Kate Colbert, my co-author for Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education. Kate, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Joe. And so excited to see you, Michelle.
I'm excited to see you too. This is a rare treat. Joe does not often turn the mic over completely to anyone because he's a smart man. You're doing that to your detriment, sir.
I have to tell you how hard this is right now for me.
I know it is. I know it is. So,
what I'm going to do is just hand it over to you, Michelle, and I will be in your hands, willing putty in your hands here.
I'm sure you're terrified. Welcome, EdUp Familia. We are so excited to have you here today. You know as well as I do from his amazing social media posts, from the work that they do to keep us informed on the podcast, that Joe and Kate are writing and releasing a book very soon called Commencement, the beginning of higher education. Hey, easy there.
All right.
Settle down. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education.
I know I couldn't even give you the silent pause. I had to jump in.
Folks, this is really so much fun. I'm getting to interview our authors today on their baby, their work of art. And so Kate and Joe, sit back, relax, get ready to tell us all about this work that you've engaged in and to pull the curtain back a little bit into what this process has been like. I'm going to kick it off right away, if you don't mind.
Do it. Hit us.
All right.
So you could do whatever you want.
Let's see who answers first. What inspired y'all to write this book? Where did this idea come from?
It's all Joe's fault. I'll let him take that. It's all his fault.
I'll take it, and I'll be quick. Like everything we do, and I mean everything, we have no plan. So just like with this book, we really had no plan. Elvin and I were sitting around, I don't know what episode we were at, like 250, 275, somewhere 300. We're like, what do we do with all of these podcasts? We have all this amazing content. It's evergreen. I think it might have been you, Michelle. You were talking to me that you had listened to like over 100 episodes. I don't remember who I was talking to. And I was like, how could somebody do, what if you get to 300 or 400? Who's going to go that far back? So we thought we really need to do something with this information. So we kicked it around for a while, and then we're like, maybe we should write a book. Who the heck out there knows anything about higher education that also might simultaneously be a writer? And actually through a friend of Kate's, Eric Williamson, who had happened to be a guest at my podcast, and he wrote a book called How to Work with Jerks. And we had him on because it was one of the most fascinating books I'd read. He introduced us to Kate, and then this whole idea that we were throwing around became a reality. Kate was the purple unicorn for us. She has worked in higher ed. She's on a board of a higher ed institution, and she just happens to be a writer and has written her own books. And we were like, okay, wait a second. So I think the inspiration comes really, though, for the book comes from the content from the university presidents, right? Like we thought, how do you interview this many presidents, over 100 presidents, and not do something with it?
Right.
It was too much. It was like, there has to be some other way. And Kate, through intervention here of friends, became the way for us to help us realize this inspiration in a book. So if you're on episode 2 or 300, or if you're on 3 and you don't want to go listen to 100, hoping we can pull some of it together for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Kate, what was that like for you when Joe reached out and said, hey, do you want to work really, really closely with me, even though I'm not always right in the head and I drive people crazy?
The second best thing in her life after she got married.
So in my defense, I knew nothing about Joe, so I didn't know what this was going to be like. No, it was actually really exciting. So the whole purple unicorn thing is really sort of funny. I also happen to own a publishing company. So I'm a professional writer and communications and marketing consultant that does a lot of work in higher education and a lot of research, student surveys and alumni surveys and all that kind of stuff. And so when Joe was first introduced to us, it was really this sense of like, Joe has this great idea for a book, and he wants to talk to a publisher. And so we had this conversation, and the more we talked about it, the more it was so obvious that the themes and this sort of so what of when you put 100 or 200 presidential interviews for colleges and universities together, that really sort of coalesces into something that's sort of greater than the sum of its parts. And I said, yes, this is a great idea for a book. And he said, if I can be just 100% honest here, he says, except the problem is I don't have time to write it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had talked about, okay, well, I wasn't planning on writing a new book this year. And the more we talked about it, the more it made sense for us to go ahead and co-author this book together. It's been just a remarkable experience, which we're happy to talk about sort of the details of that and what the book's all about. And
for sure. That's amazing. I love that this.
By the way, I did think, how hard could it be to write a book?
Wrong.
It is.
Yeah, I just spit out my tea. Yeah, how hard is it to write a book?
I couldn't pass the first word without.
When I wrote my last book, I had a big launch event, and there were all these people on media and whatnot, and somebody had the nerve to walk up to me when I was signing books and to ask, so when are you planning on publishing your next book? And I seriously almost throat punched the guy. I was like, I haven't slept in like a year. I was like, I'm like, how about we just enjoy the ride of the success of this book? So no, it's been 4 years since the last book, and the timing is just really perfect. And the most important timing that really matters is our readers' timing.
Excellent.
And professionals who work inside higher education or who consult for or work in some sort of higher education adjacency are in such a moment of change that they really need some fresh ideas and some insights. And the time is now to get them this book.
I would agree. So how do you bridge the gap between the two of you when it comes to taking on a big project like this? I'm imagining you guys did not get to take a year off of work and go sit, at a lakeside cabin and write all day long and enjoy great meals and drink great wine and have great conversations. You're actually full-time employees. You are running a business, you are running a podcast and doing a million other things. What is your process, and how quickly did you get into a process between the two of you of exchanging your chapters, your ideas, your thoughts?
Go ahead, Kate.
Oh gosh, yeah. So I would say this is book for me as a professional writer. This has been a project like no other. So people keep saying like, well, but is it like Think Like a Marketer? It's my last book, and I'm like, no. It's not your fault. It's complex. So it's one thing to sit down if you're an expert in an area and just start typing, right? And put all your best ideas into a book. But this book is not about me and Joe, nor is it about our contributor, Elvin. This book is about the insights of 100+ university and college presidents. And so
Yes.
the research, and I mean, this was, I told someone earlier today, I said it would have been easier to write like 3 PhD dissertations than to do this. But it's been really rewarding. So the process really was research first, incredible research, where, to be fair, Joe did the heavy lift. So Joe did the heavy lift with Elvin at his side, booking and interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people. And on the president's side, they're close to, almost 200 at this point. And we started working on this when they had just sort of marked the 100 presidents mark. And so it really revolved around getting me to listen to those 100+ interviews, which was a lot of work, and to take notes, to take a look at all of, and when, when you're looking at the actual transcripts and trying to figure out what are the themes and how do we want to quote this,
Of course.
it takes 4 or 5 hours to get through a 1-hour interview, to be able to parse it out and turn it into a book chapter or whatnot. So we did that. So I lived in the research for the longest time, and then we started selecting the quotes. I have a binder sitting here with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of handwritten notes and printed notes and whatnot. And so we went through the research. We added another layer of research. So we went ahead and did a survey that we sent out to the higher education marketplace, people who work in or for or around or recently worked in higher education. And so we had, about 140 some odd people participate in that research. That was anonymous research, which gave us really, really raw, important information. Yeah. I mean, people told us things we did not think they would tell us, and things that guarantee they would not have told us if we knew their name and their affiliation. So
yeah, some in the comments, like, that's the juicy stuff when you're anonymous and you go, whoa, like somebody would never admit this out loud or on a podcast, or probably never to their staff. And then for us to read it, and it's like, okay, wait a second. Some of the things that we're talking about really do exist, and in much more significant ways maybe than any of us realize. And so you start to think about those things, and then the process, to your point, Michelle, the back and forth, I also had to go back and listen to some too, because I have this memory of people I've interviewed but can't always remember what they say, but I know they said something really good. It's like, oh, you know what, gosh, Michelle, she said something so good, I just can't remember it. So now I'm going back through 40 minutes to try to find it, and then you get to have this weird, I tell people that have asked me, it's this weird, like, narcissistic / self-defeating process for me, because it's like, I'm listening, my wife's like, are you listening to yourself again? And I'm like, I'm really not doing it. I really am not doing it on purpose, just because I like to sound my own voice. But then, like, you listen to yourself and you're like, oh God, I'm such an idiot. Why the hell did I say that? Why didn't I ask that? And you start questioning yourself. But in the end, if we just focus on the brilliance of the people that we've interviewed, the book, I hate to say it's writing itself, because that's not true, but the themes are really identifiable, and it's us filling in a lot of the gaps.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about that as you're helping me to visualize what the process was like for you. You realize that you are engaging in something that you have collateral for already, So with Kate, you said earlier, you have this binder, you have this stuff. Well, that's the collateral that exists, that so many of us have been able to enjoy, kind of passing the time as we're driving back and forth, as we're sitting at our desks, and we have the EdUp experience playing in the background, and we're listening to, we're nodding and we're smiling. This is an opportunity for you all to take all of those nuggets of wisdom that we have all heard, and put them together for us. It's almost like a gift to the reader, truly. And I say that because I greatly admire what Joe does, and I'm excited that with all of your experience that you two are collaborating on this. So what is the unexpected joy of writing this book? Each of you can answer that question. What was something that just filled you with glee and excitement, and you did not expect that feeling to happen because you know how hard it is to write a book?
Yeah,
Wow.
That's about how I write. So Kate, you go first.
Oh God, I mean, I write for a living, so I find it, people always think that you must love it, right? Michelle, you had asked us sort of, before we started recording, whether does writing energize you or exhaust you? And the answer is yes. And so I always tell people that a writer is someone for whom writing is more difficult than it is for everyone else. And it's true, because it is my craft, right? It is my job. And
Mhm.
so doing it really, really, really well. It's not just about outstanding content, which this book is really about, but
Mhm.
it's about presenting it in a way that's going to inspire you and to keep your attention, and you have people grabbing post-it notes and highlighters and pens and just scribbling all over the book and making notes and saying, we need to have a meeting with our leadership at our institution to talk about this topic. And so, you said something interesting, Michelle, about how so many people have been listening in their cars or whatnot. And if most of those leaders are like the rest of us, they hear something brilliant and they're like, oh, that's so cool. And maybe they remember later to bring it up in a meeting. And in their head, in the moment, they're thinking, we need to do this, a project based on this. It's like, it triggers a big idea. And guess what? They walk into work that day and they get really busy and they get sucked into something else and they forget to do it and they forget about it. And so what this book is, and I think the responsibility I have felt in, the initial drafting of the chapters and the organization of the structure of the book is it's not just to inspire its readers, but we're trying to also hold them accountable to say, now and some of this is quantitative, by the way, because we've done research, we've done survey research. We can actually say 87% of colleges and university professionals are saying this or believe this or predicting this. And so we literally ask you in the book, how might you apply this at your institution? How might you think about this in your career? And so it's not just about being aware of the moment that we're in higher education and sort of seeing it and observing it, but it's about how can they start participating and making really, really smart, data-driven decisions and inspired decisions and start being less reactive, a little bit more proactive. And so, yeah, we're taking it very seriously. And in terms of where it's been sort of fun, it's always fun. I think the fun part is the moment where we kind of at the end of the book and the epilogue, we finally tell you what we think. So the book is very much about
Chapter 5 in your dissertation.
Yeah, right. So so it's very much about what these leaders think and what they're recommending and what they're inspiring us to do, and you get color commentary from us throughout. But we present, this book is both love letter to higher education and a devil's advocate.
Oh, that's a great line.
Right? Yeah. And
I thought
so
so too when I wrote it. Oh wait, I think maybe
Joe,
you wrote that one.
I wrote
All
that
right,
was,
you wrote it.
yeah. All right, I wrote that. We're going to be taking credit for each other's work for the rest of our lives. But it really is. And so this book is, people ask us, is this a criticism of higher ed? Is this no? It's everything. It's the
everything.
truth. It's
I would
the truth.
agree. I would agree with that.
We're bullish. I mean, Joe could not be more in love with higher education than he is, and so am I. And but there are some things that need to be examined. There are some things that need to be done better. And so we talk about that in a way that we hope is really inspiring, not accusatory. We're just saying, listen, with all respect to all of the leaders and the hundreds of years of higher education that preceded us, here's where we are now. And it's higher education is a time-honored tradition, but traditions change. And so it's time. It's time for us to think about where we go from here and to celebrate the institutions that are already at the bleeding edge of that. And so to do that. So it's been fun in a lot of ways. And I have to say, Joe, I don't know if I've said this to you. So nobody listens to Joe's voice more than I do, because I listen to all the episodes over and over and over and over. So my husband probably knows Joe's voice better than anything around here too. And I think Joe has a great voice and it's very soothing. And honestly, it has, these last several months it's been like coming home sort of. I sit down at the computer and I turn on Descript and I start playing and it's the welcome back everybody, and there he is, my friend Joe, walking us through
in
some
your home
insights.
every night.
In my home every night. Exactly. I know.
Cheers.
I appreciate that reflection, and I wanted to come back to something that you said. You said something about all the issues. It is all of the above, and it is the love affair, and it's also playing devil's advocate. When I was going through your table of contents, Joe and Kate, I was thinking, these are the phrases. The chapter titles are the phrases that we say. Where did all the students go? Chapter 3, keeping the lights on. Chapter 8, financial realities. Shattering stereotypes. We know we are in that place in higher education. not just a pretty piece of paper. You know what that means. All of you know in higher ed, you know, a degree is not just a pretty piece of paper. So you can imagine what that chapter is going to be like. These are the common issues that impact all of us and that we all feel like we get to weigh in on. And what I think is fascinating about looking at these chapter titles is I know that the best of the best have been on the podcast. And so I know that if I want to get timely, honest, reflective information from leaders across the country, that I'm going to find it all in one book. That's exciting to me because I'm a reader. It's exciting to me because I care about, the future of higher education, but it's something that I haven't seen in other books. So talk to me about how you titled the chapters and you decided that this was how you were going to do part 1 and part 2, because I know that there's a lot of intention behind them.
Yeah, before Kate answers that, because she's kind of the mastermind of structure, let me say, I want to bring in my moment of fun, and I'm going to relay it and answer your question at the same time. For me, these interviews have taken me on a journey of, I can see all the problems with higher education. I can be like all these prognosticators and all these people that tell you higher ed's going to fail. And you know what? Some institutions might if they don't make changes. And then I went on a journey. I mean, it's a really self-reflective because you start to interview these people leading these institutions, and you start to go, well, wait a minute. The innovation, the ingenuity, the caring, the support, the lack of resources, okay, yeah, is higher ed too expensive? I'll name you 10 people off the top of my head right now that are making it more affordable. You want to talk about that the elite institutions are getting all of the hype? I'll tell you 10 institutions right now that are dismantling that. I'll tell you 10 institutions right now that are serving Hispanic populations in greater numbers and focusing on it all. I get to see the rainbow that's taking place. I went from personally went from a place of doom and gloom for higher ed to maybe it's not so bad. And by the way, it is pretty damn valuable. Anybody that says it's not isn't thinking about that for their own family. They're being selfish, in my opinion. And if you're listening, you don't want to listen to the podcast anymore, you don't have to. But you know what? Yeah, non-credit is important, and as is different degree levels. But to say education doesn't have value or the value is in question, I mean, qualify that for me. For who? Answer that. For adults? No, that's not true. I'll tell you 10 schools that are proving that wrong. Anyway, I think people are going to go on a journey. And I think Kate, as we went through what do we call chapters, and I'm speaking for you a little bit here, Kate, but we're taking you on that journey. Right. But you get to take away what that journey means to you. You might come in thinking that higher ed is only upside and come out of this book going, you know what, maybe I ought to take a second look here about or it might be the other way around. But I think it's going to take you on a journey of thought, and that's what's important. And it's going to be led by a masterclass, the ultimate masterclass of knowledge. Fierce Education is the place where higher education leaders, administrators, and faculty, and those driving technology adoption decisions in education can access proven methods and best practices as they rethink pedagogy and business models in the new blended learning world. Through its website, www.fierceeducation.com, virtual events, and newsletters, Fierce Education focuses on rethinking higher education in a blended learning world. Fierce Education's key tenets are to use technology for teaching better and reaching learners everywhere, addressing business model changes required to move forward, and workforce preparation for adult learners who are out to reskill. That's www.fierceeducation.com.
While you were talking about that, and before Kate goes on to the structure, you made me realize that one of the reasons that I so enjoy the podcast is it's personal. You have brought back this oral storytelling tradition. You've brought it into higher ed, where it probably only existed in liberal arts courses. Let's say you're doing Mexican American studies or whatnot. That's something that, people of color know. We know about the oral storytelling tradition. It's very much a part of my culture. But that's what I've enjoyed the most is the stories that you've collected. And so you are, human collateral, Joe, because, without without you bringing this together. And if we lose you, God, hopefully we have all the stories collected, but Kate, as you've taken all of this in and listened and listened and listened, how did you tackle taking that information and those interviews and those people and creating a structure? Because how many episodes, Joe?
For this book, over 100 presidents, but I've done now over 500. So, and we got
How
like
did you
20.
narrow that down? How did you decide?
It was a lot. So I listened to them all. I've spent a lot of time in hotel rooms and in my local, like across the street from my house. I book a hotel. I call it Writer's Exile. And I take all my stuff and I spread it all out. It's
So
amazing.
you're in your hometown and you book a hotel.
Oh, every week.
Awesome.
Every week. And so, by the way, please buy a copy of the book, all because we need to pay all these hotel bills. But but I will tell you, it's really easy to sort of get distracted, or something needs to be done at home, or some other work needs to be done in the office. But when you are paying for a room, you're not going to sit there and watch TV. You're not going to take a nap. You're going to sit down in the uncomfortable chair at the desk with the bad lamp, and you're going in the horrible air conditioning, and you're going to work. And so what I did with all of it is that, so when I listened to all the interviews, gems as they were coming out to me, I was pulling them out of the transcripts and sort of cleaning them up and tossing them into a Word doc. But I also took about 150 handwritten pages of notes as well. Put everything, the 3-hole punched paper is sort of my friend at this point. Put everything kind of into a binder and grabbed 6 different colors of highlighters and headed back to the hotel and started going through and looking for keywords and started to sort of figure out what are the top themes.
You did hand coding. You did coding by hand.
Oh yeah, this was just
dissertation hand coding.
Yeah. So, I'm a big outliner. As a professional writer, I've always been all about sort of structure, because it's not just about organization. Structure should be logical. It should be inspired. It should be meaningful, and it should be creative. Like the way you put a book together should serve the reader. And we think that this book does that. But for us, we discovered really quickly that there were sort of 2 big buckets of types of content, right? So part 1 of the book is we call Evolutions and Revolutions in Higher Education. And it's about it's about trends by the way, that was almost the title of the book. And it's about trends to watch and waves to ride as we move forward in the industry, as we move this industry forward. And so that's the part of the book where we talk about, education is not an island. We talk about, being responsive to industry and the workforce, and being more student supportive, more community connected. It's the section of the book where we talk about not just a pretty piece of paper, where we really talk about what higher education is doing to prove its value in new ways and to really meet its mission. It's where we talk about where did all the students go. We talk about how to redefine programs and to understand new student preferences for a changing demographic. And again, we're not giving you the stuff that you can get in the Chronicle of Higher Education or any of those publications that show you all the numbers about what's happening with enrollments and whatever. We know that our readers know all that stuff. So this book is about, so what? So this book is about, okay, so we know the situation that we're in, and what are we going to do about it? And here are 15 examples just in this chapter of institutions doing really inspired things about it. And here's the kind of results they're seeing. And here's their call to action. And then we talk about the people imperative, really about sort of, student as customer and just new student services. The second half of the book, so the first part of the book really is about trends, what's happening out there and what should you be paying attention to if you work in, around, or for higher education. The second part of the book is entitled Untangling the Tassel. And this part is really about how to make sense of America's academic predicament. So what it's going to take to reimagine and rebuild higher education for a promising future. And so this is where we then take sort of those trends and we talk about, now what? So we talk about the pandemic, and in what ways was the pandemic a panacea? So in what ways did it sort of kickstart us forward? And what are some of the things that institutions have begun to do?
By the way, Untangling the Tassel, get it? Commencement, Untangling the Tassel.
Joe, that is my favorite chapter title. I was going to come to that. That is one of the things that y'all have done really well, is you've created visual imagery in some of these chapter titles, which helps, that Untangling the Tassel. I just kept coming back to that.
Just yesterday, I found an artisan who can make us really, really beautiful resin, gold resin bookmarks with gold tassels that match the book. So I'm thinking those may be some VIP gifts for book signings. But the second half of the book is really about then how do we think about the value of higher education in the 2020s and beyond? And then we get deep into leadership, right? So we want leaders talking to our readers about leadership. And so we asked really, really specific questions of everyone who was interviewed, and Joe and all of his co-hosts and over these past couple of years have asked really poignant questions about what does the future of higher education look like, and got really candid and inspiring comments from the presidents. And we are putting out there, and I'm really proud of this. So this book is not just all narrative. There are some tools in here. And this was an idea that Joe had really early in the project that has really coalesced into something every now and then. He's got a great idea. And he had an idea of, Kate, what if we did some research about and presented a new skill set for higher education leaders? Like, what does it look like? If you're going to hire somebody in your leadership team at a higher education institution, what skills do they have to have? What skills, experiences, attitudes, attributes, characteristics, traits, what do they need to have? And so we asked about that in all these interviews. So we coalesced a lot of that information. And then in our anonymous survey to the marketplace, we actually had people weigh in on that in very, very specific, quantifiable ways. And the answers we got, I can guarantee, are not the answers we would have gotten had we done this survey 5 years ago.
So you could pick up a copy of the book today and find out what you thought. It may not be correct. How about that?
Well, I mean, I've seen it recently, looking at the younger generation of leaders that are coming up through higher ed here in the Gulf Coast region. I've noticed, that the millennial group that's coming behind us, Gen Xers, they're very different in terms of how they want to lead and how they want a brand of leadership that is authentic to them. So, as you're talking about this skill set, I'm really curious to find out what higher ed leaders who have possibly been in the position for a really long time have to say about, Joe, I know part of some of the interviews I've been on with you, there were people who were retiring, getting ready to leave higher ed in the next couple of years. And so these takeaways that they have for the next generation, I can see why faculty should read this. I can see why, mid-management folks should read this. Probably student services folks need to read it. Education partners outside of higher ed probably need to take a look at what all this means. So the value of the book definitely established. And I've got it here on Amazon, and I'm going to pre-order my copy, as all of you should be doing. Commencement, by Joe and Kate here, and also by Elvin, my favorite collaborator there. Now, tell me what your writing space looks like. Tell me what your superstitions on writing have become. Tell me about what it looks like and sounds like when you're writing.
Kate's probably more specific. Mine looks like two kids screaming and running around the house, and I go, what was I just thinking about? And then I go back, and the sentence that I started is only halfway done, and then the second half of the sentence makes no sense for the first half, and then I got to go back and revise it, that kind of thing. I get, for me, Michelle, I think so much of it is you got to be in a zone. Like I do find that, I'm not a higher ed writer. I wrote a dissertation. That bit is similar, where you have to be in your zone.
Right.
If you can get in a zone, you can make it happen. So I do like to have a space in my calendar, right? Like whether it's on Saturday or whether it's on Sunday, creating a space where I know that I can be gone for a little while, because it takes me 15 minutes to get in the zone and 15 minutes to come out of it. So, having enough space, that's important. By the way, and I want to say this bit before we move on, this book is more than just presidents, right? It's more than the presidents that we interviewed. And I want to say this, Michelle, because you made me think of it. I know for sure that you interviewed one of these presidents with me. I know for sure you did. And I know others that have been my co-hosts through this. It's not just about me. It's not just about Kate. It's about you all, and the EdUp experience being like a crowdsourced podcast where you can come be a guest and be a co-host.
Truly.
And you provided insights. You, Michelle, and all of the co-hosts provided insights to get the presidents to say what they did in a natural, organic way. So for me, the superstitions, when I think about it, is for me, it's like the more formal I get, I got to call myself out on it, because this book is meant to be informal. So I start writing like I'm writing for my dissertation chair. And I remember that I'm not, getting somebody to approve this, and maybe the public, but somebody's not going to approve it, in that way. And it's like, I got to remember that this needs to be written like we're talking about it, not like we're doing, intense quantitative research.
It's a conversation, and we're inviting the readers into that conversation. And it's a conversation that has never really happened ever in the history of higher education.
I agree.
I don't believe that there has ever been a conference where 100 or more college and university presidents all came together and talked really candidly about value and about what's happening at their institutions and what keeps them up at night, and where they struggle and where they're excited, and never before has such a group been available for everyone else to listen to. And so I think that is really unique. And and Joe's he works like anywhere and everywhere. As a writer myself, I'm all about like the craft and the sort of the process and what have you. Like I cannot wear shoes when I'm writing. I don't know why. I've never been able to wear shoes. And when I'm writing, I like to be barefoot or socks or something. I need to have my space. And if my husband walks into my office and I'm like in that zone that Joe talks about and I'm in the middle of a sentence, like he knows, do not speak to me. If I look like I'm concentrated, do not speak to me. And if he interrupts me, I will just turn around. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, get out of my office. Like now.
Access denied.
So Kate,
exactly. Yeah.
If I think you and I are very similar in our writing, if my husband comes in and looks over my shoulder or tries to, you have violated me. You have violated my trust. Access denied. I'm angry at you for the rest of the day. So I wanted to get to that nitty-gritty part, but I appreciate what you said, Joe, because the writing, the way that you two are capturing it, you are deconstructing the formality that has made higher ed a barrier in so many different areas to so many different people, including those of us who work in it now. Would you agree?
Yes.
I think that's right. Yeah. I mean, every day, sometimes it's like, for me, if I hear the word committee, I sweat instantly. It's like it's like a trauma, because I know it's going to be associated with slow in most respects. And then it feels like I can't get my job done. And why can't we make faster decisions? And why do we have to talk to so many people? And I'm all about transparency and shared governance, but there's slow and there's fast. And I think also with the way that the presidents, and I can't say enough about them and their willingness to open up, I mean, there'd be no book without these interviews, right? Was the way in which they answered the questions. I'd like to think that one of the values of the EdUp Experience podcast is that we can disarm you enough so that you're willing to have an honest conversation with us. I'm not going to give you a structured format. I might give you a surprise guest, and that surprise guest also works in higher education, and they are doing the down and dirty work that you're doing too, Mr. and Mrs. President. Like, talk to us. And they did. And that, I think, by the nature of the responses, deconstructed a lot of that, pomp and circumstance, for lack of a better way to say it.
And you did have a formula, at least, Joe, in those last two questions that you posed to every guest, and certainly to every college president. You did have those last two questions. Tell us what those questions are, to remind our listeners.
Of course, it was tell us, anything that we missed about, your university, anything that you want to say, speaking engagements you have going on the website you want to drop. What did we miss? And, basically say anything you want about your university. That question's important because it opens you up to say whatever you want. And, it makes you feel comfortable and open to say whatever comes to mind. And then secondarily to that, always, what is the future of higher education? I actually say it just like that. What do you think the future of higher education is going to look like?
And sometimes he offers them $1 million if they give a good answer, but
he does.
So
rescinds that prize.
So far, no money has been given out because we
listen, if this becomes a New York Times bestseller, we may be able to offer those kind of prizes. So honestly, I have to be really honest about this. So when I first connected with Joe and Elvin and we started talking about this project, and I started thinking, how in the world do I get my arms around all of this research? How in the world do I start swimming in it when I haven't been listening to all of these interviews from the beginning? So I was already behind, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, how in the world do I do this? And how do I create some amount of sort of standardization in the way that we think about
Sure.
these conversations? Honestly, and I've never said this to Joe before, had he not asked, what do you think the future of higher education looks like at the end of every single episode, I'm not sure that I would have agreed to co-author this book, because the work would have been so much harder.
Mhm.
And so because those are really sort of, listen, there are gems in every single interview, and when you connect them all together, it's just amazing. But those final few minutes of every episode are
Right.
just golden in almost every single case. And so
You know what,
those
Michelle, I'd like
get
to take
quoted.
credit for that, but that is Elvin Freitas. That
And
right at the
that's
beginning.
great. Tell
Mhm.
Elvin that right now across the country, podcasters are writing this idea down to make sure
Right.
that they can one day do the same thing that Joe and Kate and Elvin are doing, which is
Well,
turn
the
podcasting.
future is and interestingly, that was the most important part of my last book. When I wrote Think Like a Marketer for business people, every single chapter has whatever the topic is. It's then I sort of weigh in on what I think the future of that topic or theme looks like. And
Mhm.
I've actually been interviewed by like celebrity futurists to talk about corporate, structures and whatnot, and they just want to talk about my predictions. Right. And so that whole forward thinking.
Mhm.
And so that's what I think I really love about this whole project and this book and what it brings to the readers, is that it acknowledges where we've been and sort of the time-honored traditions, and it acknowledges where we are, but then it focuses very heavily on where are we going, right? That whole, Wayne Gretzky's uncle told him, said, skate to where the puck is going, right? And so, and that's what we try to do, is to have conversations in this book about where do we think the industry is headed, and where do we know it's already headed, and where has it already gone, where we might be a little bit behind, and need to get at that. And and it's just full of gems. And I love what Joe just said a minute ago about that this book is a reminder of how important post-secondary education of all types are for people in every country around the world. There's a really great sort of quote that just really sort of touched my heart. Marvin Krislov, who's the president of Pace University, and we quote him as such in the book, said, "Collectively, we need to affirm our belief in the power of education to change people's lives."
Mhm.
That's
That's
it.
actually, yeah, that's
Right.
profound.
And that's foundational. And what I'm hoping to is so I think some of the most important people who will read this book are people, who are, early in their career, in their first 5, 10, 12 years working in higher education, and they work in the admissions office or the financial aid office, or, they work in, their administrative assistant to a department chair or whatnot. And maybe they don't have daily access to their president, and maybe they have no idea the kinds of conversations that are happening at president's cabinet meetings or at board meetings, and they don't understand maybe exactly where the work that they do every day, that tireless, exhausting work that doesn't end Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, maybe they don't understand where it fits into the bigger picture of the
Mhm.
industry,
Very good.
and where they fit and what their career looks like if they choose to stay in higher education.
Mhm.
And so for all those people who are sort of, accidental, admission people, or accidental higher ed marketers, or whatever the case might be, gives them an opportunity to really think about the industry where they have landed or have found themselves, and figure out how might they bloom where they're planted, how might they fall in love with the industry in the way that some of the people who work around them are already in love with it, and how might they really understand how to have conversations about the big topics sort of the day in the industry. So we just couldn't be more excited about this, if you can't tell.
I can tell, but there's a good reason, and you think about when you were talking about Kate, who's going to read this and who should read this, and maybe it is that younger generation or that newer leader or that newer member of higher ed. But remember that in centers of excellence for teaching and learning across the country, we do book studies. And so I challenge y'all to have a companion, a study guide to go along with that, because I know that as soon as it comes out, I'm going to institute it as a book study at our college, because it is the most modern take, the most up-to-date and timely information on the state of higher education.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
also like multiple perspectives, right? Like there's people that have written books on higher ed, one or two people. We're writing it with 100 co-authors
Yeah.
and
Unreal.
the co-hosts that ask the questions. I mean, it really is something else. By the way, I do want to say that Michelle, you were supposed to do this with us the other day, but you did cancel on us. But that you are back, just for the record.
You all know Joe cannot help it. He has to attack. I am better. And I'm glad that I was able to do it, Joe, because this is something that I think is really important, really meaningful. One of the things that you and I have always agreed on is that it is just too slow around here. And we've got to change the culture. We've got to change the bureaucratic systems. And I think your book indeed is what you said, a love affair, but also that devil's advocate, pushing back and challenging the norms and challenging the expectations. If we don't have folks who are willing to put themselves out there and do the work to change the system's never going to change. I mean, someone has to lead these efforts. And so that's what I appreciate about you guys. As we're kind of coming to a close here, because I know Joe's formula, and I know we're already over time for the standard podcast. I want to ask, what, for each of you to answer, what have we not touched on that you want to share, each of you? And then what is the future of higher ed?
Go ahead, Kate.
Oh gosh. I do want to say that what we learned, I think, as co-authors and co-researchers and collaborators in this is a lesson for everyone is just, first of all, we're better together. So one of the top themes that came out in the interviews for this book was around partnership. And institutions that are doing really, really well are looking at partnerships with K-12 institutions, with
Beautiful.
corporations, with other colleges and universities, the community college presidents who have unbelievable relationships with the local state, university president. All of these collaborations were just really huge. And for us, we became better together. Joe and I are a really great combo because I used to work inside higher ed and now I consult to it, right? So I'm the outsider and he's currently an insider. And so we brought some different perspectives to the conversations. And that shows, I think, in all that we're doing. Gosh, the future of higher ed, we get into it in depth in the book's epilogue, but I think that it looks like a lot of things. First of all, it still exists. It still thrives. It looks different. It looks meaningfully different. Joe's children, Elvin's children, kids who are 8 or 10 or 4 right now, they're going to go through a college experience or some sort of post-secondary education experience when their time comes, and they're going to look back at it and they're going to say, this is not my mom or dad's college experience. It's so much better.
Wow.
And we really believe that, and what it's going to take to look like that, it's going to take remembering what we're all here for, and we're here for the learner.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the learner need? What are their needs? What are their expectations? What are their desires? What career path are they on? In what way are they looking to broaden themselves, upskill, reskill, all of the things that they're coming to higher education, knocking on our door and saying, here's what I need from you.
Right.
In the past, I think we sometimes have kept them a little bit at arm's length. We have sometimes made it too difficult. There have been too many hoops to jump through for our stakeholders, as well as for the people working inside of higher education. And I think that the future of higher education has less friction than we have experienced in the past. And the pandemic has helped push us forward and realize that we can do things quickly, easily, data-driven and frictionless. And I think that what awaits us is going to be very exciting. Will there be some pain? Yes. Is there, is disruption? Yeah, is disruption disruptive, right? When other organizations that we don't think of as higher education institutions start competing in the learning space, is that going to be painful for some of us? Yes. But this is an industry ripe for change, and the change benefits the stakeholders. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Look, there's no EdUp experience without Elvin Freites. He's, we'll tell you the story in the book, we've told it before, but he was kind of the brainchild. I was ready for something, and we filled each other's cup up. Elvin Freites, as I like to refer to him. There is no EdUp experience without Elvin. He brings so many ideas to the table as a contributor to this book. He'll show you. We'll have insights from Elvin too. Elvin is a brilliant man. Let me just tell you guys that he does a lot of the ideation of things. He
Mhm.
probably came up with the book in the first place. He's probably like, dude, we should write a book. And he probably thought about it. He probably thought about it the day he said, why don't we ask everybody what the future of higher ed is? And he was probably thinking in his mind, we will write a book one day. And then, fast forward 100 episodes and he's going, see, I told you so, dude, dude, he goes, Doctor. When I call him, he goes, Dr. Joe. So anyway, I just want to say that you'll get insights from me, from Elvin, from Kate in this book, 100 university presidents, and all the co-hosts that have come along the way. Remember, this book is for you. It's not for us. It's for people to go, oh, you know what? That's pretty cool. And then I will tell you this, that no matter what opinions you come in with, your opinions will be changed in some way, shape, or form. You'll see that some ideas that you get from one section might be dismantled in another because presidents are looking at it from different ways. Is really fascinating. I got to say that. And what's the future of higher ed? I don't know. I'd head to our website or Amazon, buy the book, and perhaps I'll write down finally my prediction for the future of higher ed. I've never given it before. You might be able to pick it pieces together. My brain's full. Maybe I'll finally put it into the book, and that's where you have to find out. Or listen to more podcasts, one or the other.
Well, that is a typical Joe answer. I will say this, getting to listen to you and watch you actually as you're answering these questions and getting to see how passionate you are about the work that you have put together, it makes it even more meaningful that we have in higher ed something that other industries don't have. We have a unifying opportunity here through your book to get into the same issues, to have the same conversations, to admire the same leaders, to examine the same issues. So what EdUp has certainly done is brought the circle closer, right? What this book will do is probably launch a lot of leaders, really be a guide and a pathway for those of us who are looking to change the way we do things around here. So thank you both for your phenomenal efforts. Kate, I hope we can meet in person one day. Joe, same for you. And
I would love it. Hey, come to a book signing. I'm sure there are going to be many. I also want to give a quick shout out to Francisco Marmolejo, who penned the foreword for the book. He's the higher education president at the Qatar Foundation and brings a really interesting international lens to this conversation. This book is not just for higher education leaders in the United States. This is really a sort of a global perspective. And by the way, even parents of students or current students, we actually even have one of the gems in the book is we actually have a shopping list, a tip list for how to choose a college or university using modern sort of filters for how to figure out what's a good institution that aligns with what you're looking
maybe
for.
how I'll, a little bit of insider, how I'll let my kids choose higher ed, or how I'll take them through the process, and how Michelle might take them through the process, knowing what you know about higher ed. It's really that inside look that not a lot of people can provide. One other way that I can provide something that nobody else can is here on the EdUp Experience, bring together these amazing people. I was going to let you outro, Michelle, but I can't help myself. Ladies and gentlemen, my host today, the amazing Dr. Michelle Cantu-Wilson.
Joe, you cracked me up.
All right, you want to say, ladies and gentlemen, you just EdUp'd, Michelle, or would you like me to do it?
I'm going to let you do it.
Kate, thank you very much for coming on. Good to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, by Kate Colbert and Joe Sallustio, with contributions by Elvin Freites, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
amazing.